Hi everyone, this is Ashley Jones, and in this tutorial we're going to get started with your cut and stitch software from Designs and Machine Embroidery. So I am inside the cut and stitch software, and we're going to be using features that are specific to this program. Cut and stitch software will work with your embroidery machine, can save embroidery files and read embroidery files. You can also save files for your digital cutters, which also includes rhinestone files. So let's get started with the basics. So I'm going to be just using a text to show you the different things that you can do, and then we'll talk about using other artwork. So I just chose my text tool, click one time on the screen, and it'll put the text on the screen. Now this program uses true type text. Your true type text are the fonts that live on your computer, and this list may be different on your computer than it is on mine, because you can download true type fonts. So my list probably looks different than what's on your computer. So what we want to do is choose a font that is bold for what we are doing today. So I'm going to be using this Clarendon font, and I think that's one that most people probably have on their computer. So let's change this from text. I'm going to do the letter A and click apply. And let's make this a larger. So not every object is going to be good for applique or rhinestones if it's really small. So let's make it larger so that we know that it's going to work well with what we're showing. So, and we'll talk more about that in other videos. So I'm going to make this, let's say, about a 2-inch, and then click apply, and it changes the size of your letter. So I'm going to copy and paste this letter. So I've choose my select tool, make sure the letter is selected with the box around it. I'm going to click copy and paste. It pastes the letter right on top of the one that I copied and pasted, so I just move it to the side. It's already selected when you paste it. And now I'm going to do that one more time, because we're going to do 3 different types of media. So I don't have to do copy, because copy, I've already done that, and so it's already on the clipboard, and so I can just paste again. Notice it pops that box right there. So all I have to do is hover over till I see my hand, and then I can slide that out of the way. Now I'm going to select everything by clicking Control A, or you can drag a box around all the things on your screen, and I'm going to use the distribute horizontally even, and I'm going to make sure that they're all lined up with the vertical align. Okay, it doesn't have to be, because we're just playing, but I just wanted to show you some of those tools. So now let's select the middle A and make it a B, just so it's easy to talk about the different letters. And then I'm going to select the last one and choose it to be a C. Click apply. So now we've got A, B, C on the screen. Now notice when I change the letters, I've got different distance between these because the letters are shaped different. So let's do that again with the distribute. So I'm going to select everything, Control A or drag a box, and then let's do evenly distribute and our center align. So looks good. And again, not necessarily for what we're doing, but I just wanted you to use your tools. So now let's select the B and change it to red. So put the selection box around it by clicking on it, and then go down to your color chips, and I'm going to choose red, and I'm going to do a right mouse click. Turns it to red. I'm going to click on my C so that it is selected, and do a right mouse click on color chip 3, which is green. Okay. Now all of these letters currently are artwork. Remember, we're using our true type text. There are no stitches in this file. If I go over to my sequence view, which is down on the bottom here, you can see that it has a 0 next to each of the text. That means there are no stitches in this design. Now, when I convert it to embroidery stitches, you'll see that number increase, and so we'll see that in just a bit. So now for artwork, you can use cut and stitch to save files for your digital cutter by clicking this cutter icon on the toolbar. When you click cutter, it's going to bring in the object you have selected. You can see that it only has the A and shows that on the screen. I can click save and choose my digital cutter format to save this letter A to a cut file. Okay, but I'm going to close this because we want to do all 3 letters. So I'm going to select everything on the screen, Control A or drag a box, then choose my cutter tool. Now notice that I actually have 3 different frames. I have 3 different colors, so it gives them to me separately, so that when I take this to my digital cutter, if I was going to cut this out of a material that's 3 different colors, it gives them to me separately so I can load those different colors into my machine. So let's actually save this. So I'm going to click Save. Choose the digital cutter format that you need. I have a cutter that uses SVG and one that uses FCM, so I'm going to choose FCM for this one, and I'm going to call this our ABC cut file. And click Save. It's going to save all of those 3 letters separately. So I'm going to change my view to extra large. Now I can see these as individual images because I have Perfect Stitch Viewer. If you have some sort of thumbnailer that will display your SVG or FCM files, that's how I can see them. If yours just looks like an icon, that means you do not own a thumbnailer that will convert those to images. Our Perfect Stitch Viewer is the program that does this. So now you can see I have a file for my A, file for my B, and a file for my C. So I can take those to my digital cutter and cut them out of different materials because they are different colors. Let's say if I go to my cutter tool with all of them selected, they're different colors on the screen, but let's say you want them all cut out of the same material. You can click single color. It will put them on the screen. It keeps the arrangement because I have it checked here. And when I click save, it's going to save this in one file just as you see it here on the screen. Make sure when you click save that you don't forget to choose the correct format for your digital cutter. Okay, so now let's close that out, cancel and close. And now let's convert these to different types of media. So I'm going to leave the A as artwork so we have a comparison. The B, I'm going to turn that to an applique or embroidery. So now your embroidery options are run, applique, applique with a stippling fill, or a vinyl applique. So to convert this to an applique, you just click on this applique option. And just like that, your artwork is turned to a stitch file. If we watch our slow redraw up here in the top left, and I slide this bar, you can see we get a placement stitch, a tack down stitch, and the satin finishing stitch for the applique. Anytime in any dime software, if you choose applique, it always gives you those 3 stitches. Placement, tack down, and finishing. Now, I could also have this be just a run stitch. So if I click the run stitch, it converts it. If I click this to be an applique stippling, it opens up this page here, and I can choose any of these motifs, and you can see it fills in my stitch with that decorative motif. I still have that satin finish, and it's still going to give me the placement and the tack down. You can check that by watching the slow redraw if you like. I'm going to select it again, and let's do vinyl applique. Now we're teaching working with HTV in your embroidery. HTV in your applique will rip away from the outside. You don't have to do any trimming. It's actually fun and easy, but it will also rip away from the inside. So you want to fuse it to your fabric. If you cannot fuse it, or you're working with a fabric that say has a nap that doesn't fuse well, use this vinyl applique setting, and it gives you that trapping stitch in the inside. That trapping stitch is a run stitch of a specific width or length, that's going to make sure that your vinyl doesn't rip away from the inside if you can't fuse it properly to your item. So it's just a little safety net there. One more thing I want to point out, let's go back to the regular applique here. You can change the applique stitch type. Over here in the properties, if you click this drop down box, you can change to a decorative type stitch, and you also have a list of options here. So I'm just going to select this one and click apply. Now you can see instead of my satin stitch, I now have this decorative stitch for that finishing stitch, and you can adjust the pattern length, the stitch length, and all of that will adjust the look of these stitches. So play around with these settings and see if there's something that you like in here. You can also audition your fabric in this particular applique, So if I click on the fabric option, you might have some fabrics in here that already are built in, but I know for sure you do have the Caesar HTV, and these are the options that you can audition. So let's say we want to see what the red glitter is going to look like. So looks kind of cool, right? So you can audition that in your stitches as well. Now, if you have an embroidery design on the screen, let's change this back to a regular satin, click apply. When you change this, or when you create an embroidery design, to save the embroidery file, you want to save it the same way you have done every other dime software. File, save as, and then from this drop down list you want to choose the format from your embroidery machine. So I'm going to choose PES for my machine type, and let's call this our B embroidery, and I'm going to click save. Now, because I chose to save that as an embroidery machine format, it is only going to save the format or the embroidery design. So see, for my PES file here, you can see it only saved the B because our embroidery machine is not going to be able to read the artwork files. It's only saving what is embroidery. So if you don't have any stitches, it'll give you a little warning that says there's no embroidery stitches, so your embroidery machine's not going to recognize it. But in this case, we have our applique. Now for the C, let's turn that into rhinestones. Now your options for rhinestones are bling stroke, which means it's going to just be around the outside of the letter, or bling fill, which is going to fill in your C completely. Now, this is what I was talking about with size of the letter. Let's make this larger. And you can see it actually adds more rhinestones. Not every design that you bring on the screen is appropriate for rhinestones or applique. As you know, applique requires an area of fabric, so you want something a little bit larger that you're going to actually be able to put the fabric in. Now, this isn't huge, but sometimes the rhinestones will make a difference. Now, changing the color of the rhinestones works the same way. So if I select the rhinestone design down on my rhinestones below, I can click on the color of the rhinestone that I want, and you can see it turns that to green. Now, of course, that's not going to matter. When you create this, you'll choose the color rhinestones you want. So also, you want to make sure the rhinestone size is set correctly. So I have created a color palette below with all 10SS because that's mostly what I own. And the last two options here are a 16 and a 20SS because that's what I own. So if you right mouse click, I'm going to change the color of this one here. If you right mouse click, you can see it changes the color. But if you left mouse click or just regular click, it opens up this bead palette. You can choose from different colors. And so let's just go back to a green, but you can also choose different sizes. Now, I own mostly 10SS. I do have a few colors in some of these other sizes, but let's just choose a 20 millimeter green, and I want to show you what it does. Say OK, and you can see that these stones are much larger. Because the size 20 is larger than the size 10. But I own size 10, so I'm going to do a click on number 7, and then I'm going to go back and change that to a 10, and I'm going to slide this over so you can see when I click apply. So watch the letter when I click OK, and watch the stone sizes change. Smaller stones, it can fill in more of the area. So now, to get this particular letter C, the rhinestone design, to your USB stick or however you transfer, you want to go to File and Export Bling. Export Bling will export the rhinestone portion of the design that's on the screen. Notice it's only giving me C, and that is it, because that's the only rhinestone design on my workspace. Make sure that in the type, you choose the type for your digital cutter. So if you have a Brother Scan and Cut or some other type of cutter, choose the correct format. So I'm going to choose my SVG for this one, and then click Save when you're done. Now the frame that's around, I like to leave that on because it'll actually cut a box, so it'll cut that shape out of my material so I can easily pull out that C. So I like to leave that frame. It'll just do that extra cut around it out of my material. So I'm going to click Save, and we're going to give this a name. I'm going to call this our C bead design, and click Save. And now when it saves that file, I can open it up. So let's close this, and I'm going to go back to my desktop. And now you can see that I've got my SVG file. Notice all it is those little circles, because your digital cutter is going to cut out a circle for every stone. And remember to set the size, because that circle is a different size based on the different size stone. So it'll be that correct size. So those are the 3 different types of media that we primarily use with our cut and stitch software. And this works not just with letters, but it also works with artwork. Maybe you own some artwork, or maybe you want to use the built-in. So let's do it one more time. So I'm going to click a new page here. And in this case, instead of text, we're going to go and choose a craft shape. So if I click on my shapes, I can look through all of these built-in categories to find an artwork shape that I want. Now, everything that's built in here, none of this is stitches. It is all artwork. So you can choose the artwork, and then you can convert it to the stitch type that you want. So let's choose, I'm going to go and choose maybe a flower, and let's choose this one and click OK. Now this flower has a white center and the pink outside. So if I click to turn this into applique, you can see that it creates my center and the outside as an applique. If I want to change the color of the center, so let's look over here in our sequence view. I'm going to push the plus. Notice now it says applique and it has a number, 5866. That's the number of stitches that's in this file. Remember, if we go to artwork, I'm going to go back to my artwork up here at the top and click the plus, and it says 0 and it's artwork because there's no stitches in this file. Now this is not filled in. If I want to fill in the artwork, I go over here to my properties, click fill and click apply, and we're back to what it was originally. Or I could have done my undo on my keyboard. So let's do that again. So I'm going to go to applique again. And I want this center part to be a different color than the outside here. So what I can do is click my breakup option. That's going to separate into 2 separate appliques rather than one applique. So now I can select the center, and let's maybe make that yellow. So now I've got 2 separate appliques on the screen, and you can see that it is a 669 for the center there and 5176 for the outer. Let's watch that on our slow redraw. So notice here it's going to first stitch the placement and the tack down for the center, and then the placement and tack down for the flower. Now, if you've done any amount of embroidery, you know that that is backwards. We need to do the main body of the flower first and then the center, unless you're going to trim around it when you're done, which we don't want to. So let's click and drag the yellow and drop it on top of the pink, and that puts it in a different order. Okay, and so now when we watch this stitch out, we're going to get the pink, and I would just leave that flower whole and then do my applique center right on top of it. Now I'm going to do an undo right here at the top, and that put my yellow back first. Another thing you can also do is you can use this send to front, send to back option if you know you want it to go all the way to the front. So if I click send to front, it's going to move that yellow down so that it's the last thing that stitches. So it's on the top of the design. Okay, so that's the order that we want. Now I'm going to do an undo several times again. Let's get back to our original artwork, and now let's talk about converting this to rhinestones. So we can have this be a rhinestone outline, which I think is super cute. I love that. And I can do my breakup again. And notice now I've got 2 different bling. Now the 21 and the 160, that's beside the bling stroke in my sequence view over here, that's the number of rhinestones it's going to take to create that. So now I can select the center, and I can do a right mouse click and change the color of the center. Let's make that pink. Okay, so now I've got pink and orange rhinestones. When I select this design and say export bling, notice now I have just the ring and I have 2 pages because there's 2 different colors of stones. Okay, so I've got the center color and the outside color. Now, I have this set up for pink and orange stones. If you want it to be all one color, you can just choose the single page and you can see how it all puts it on one, or multiple pages is going to separate that out so that you can rake in your orange stones separate than your pink stones. Okay, so, and when you click save, it will save those as two separate files. Don't forget to choose your format for your cutter. Okay, now, so let's go back. I'm going to do undo again because I don't want these broken up. So I'm going to do undo. Undo is my favorite key. I use it a lot. My favorite tool. Okay, let's go back to the original and let's do Bling Fill because you get something completely different here. So now you can see that I have an opening because there was that center was cut out. So I don't have those rhinestones in the center for that Bling Fill. And Bling Fill always fills in rhinestones everywhere. And now let's do an undo. So for this, before we do the Bling Fill, let's break up this artwork because I have that option. It now separates into two pieces. I've got the center and the outer. Now they're in an order where this is behind, so I can't see it. So let's bring it forward by using our move to front. And now it's still a little hard to see because it's the same color. So let's do a right mouse click on our color chip below to make the center a different color. So now let's select everything and convert to Bling Fill. So now I do have a separate centerpiece here. Let me move this out of the way so you can see. But notice it's over top of all of those stones. So I'm going to undo and put it back. So you have a few different options here. If you click on this bead option, and you see something red, that's every place that two stones overlap. So you do need to get rid of those so that you don't put stones over top of stones. So you can individually, so if I use my zoom tool, click and zoom in, I can now use my bead select tool and I can select this red stone. You can see the box around it, and I can press the delete on my keyboard. Now we have a lot of stones to remove, so if I press delete, you can see that it is taking one at a time, and that might take a little time. So if you had one stone to do, that's a great way to do it. So let's zoom back out, and I am going to remove them all at once. So if I select the yellow part, because it is on top, and I do a right mouse click, under Bling, I have the option to remove overlap. So this will remove all of those at one time. So now if I click on my bead tool, nothing's red anymore. Okay, now let me show you one more thing you can do. So I'm going to do a bunch of undos again. So let's do undo, 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 putting all those stones back, and now we've got our two layers. So the reason I'm going to go back to my select tool, you can see that I don't have a hole cut out here. I just have, do my undo to put it back in place. I have this color shape on top of this color shape. So when we did our stones, it put them underneath, but we saw how we could fix that. But when you're cutting out vinyl, sometimes they're not layerable. So certain types of vinyl, HTV, is not layerable. So you want to not have the pink underneath the yellow. So if we select both of these by dragging a box or do your Control A. Let's do the trim option. So these settings up here are to help you edit your artwork. So if I do trim, it will cut a hole behind the yellow. So if I move the yellow out of the way, now we have a hole here. So now when we convert this, it's going to automatically leave that hole. So I'm going to do undo to put the yellow back. Let's select everything, Control A or click and drag a box. And now let's convert to Bling Fill. Just like that. So now I do not have the orange stones underneath the yellow, but if I use my bead tool here, you can see I still have some red because those two overlap. So always a good idea to check that and see if you've got them overlapped. So then now when I do the remove overlap, it only has to remove the ones around the outside, but you can see it still does the trick. So look at that. So now if we choose File and Export Bling to get our rhinestone design, you can see I've got all of those rhinestones. I've got this set to a SS10, so size size 10, and it's going to take 607 stones for the orange, and for the yellow, it's going to take 46 stones, and that's on page 2 right there. So if you want them to be all one color, you can just tell it to put it on a single page, and then it's just going to cut it out all together. You can rake them in all one color, or you can still try to attempt to make that center yellow. Make sure that you choose your format for your cutter, and then just click save and take that to your digital cutter to cut out your rhinestone design. Now, there's no rule that says you cannot mix and match different types. So right now, I've got the outside only selected. I can have that just be a bling fill, or a bling stroke, sorry. And you can see it did put my rhinestones back, so we want to make sure that we double check and remove that. So now I've got a filled in center, but just an outline of the rhinestones on the outside. And I actually kind of like that better. But you can also have applique. So if I choose just the outside, I can convert that to an applique design. And you can see here that it gives me the applique center, which we do need because we want that center to be covered and we don't want any raw edge. So we do need that line, that fill in the center there, that satin stitch. So what I might do is two different things. You could either make this smaller by clicking and dragging, and it does adjust the number of rhinestones, and you can just put that right back to the center. And you can also select everything and try your center tool. If the design is not offset, it will center it for you. There we go. So now I've got the rhinestones just inside of my center part with that satin stitch. And like I said, you do want that, or else you'll have that raw edge if you're trimming it out. Now, if you just want to put the rhinestones on top of the fabric without this satin center, you can break this up and then just delete that. And now you just have the rhinestones in the center. And now that you don't have that, you could make that back a little bit larger if you want. Select everything, Control A or drag a box, and then use your Center Everything tool right here on your toolbar. And now if we watch this stitch out, with our slow redraw, we're going to get that placement stitch and tack down. You're going to put your piece of fabric there. But that rhinestone center will need to be a separate file to go to your cutter. So make sure you choose File and Export Bling, and it's just going to do that center part for you. Save that to your cutter format. But also you need to do File, Save As, and choose your embroidery machine format for the flower. So whichever format you work with, as you guys know, we have all formats for all brands of embroidery machine, and then click your save after you give it a name and choose a location. So save the design, export the bling, and then your cutter tool is for your vinyl. And don't forget, you can check over here in your sequence view to make sure of what you've got. We've got an embroidery applique file, 5176 stitches. We've got a bling file that's got 39 rhinestones for the center. So hopefully this helped you get started with your cut and stitch software program for designs and machine embroidery.